next time.
Hello, I'm Ruth Sheehan.
And I'm Danielle Tully.
And we're putting the real in real estate. So today we have a topic that is very much on fuego in this market. We're hearing this term all over the place, and we thought we'd dig into it a little bit and say, what does it mean when we talk about highest and best?
So highest and best, right? So that is a term when usually there's multiple offers. So it basically says that we got your offer, thank you very much, but my client would like to give the opportunity for everybody to come back and present their highest number, right? The highest they're willing to pay for the house, and all the other things that make up the multi-page document that you fill out and offer.
I'm going to add here for 1 second, yes. Just really quick, sorry. Because traditionally or in the past in different markets, you would often have an agent, a listing agent, call for highest and best. Like people would put in an offer, and then the agent would go back and say, now we're asking for everyone's highest and best. But I think what people need to know right now is that the likelihood is you're in multiple offers from the beginning. So really, the idea that you're going to get a second call and a second swing is not always true. The agent isn't necessarily going to come back and ask you to go whether you want to go higher or not in this current market.
And that's what I was going to get into, and that's kind of in lieu. This general calling of highest and best is usually in lieu of going back and individually negotiating whatever was presented as an offer. And we'll probably say this more than one time, but I want to make this very, very clear over and over, is that there is no guarantee you are ever going to have a second shot at an offer. So the idea of negotiations and the idea that somebody's going to come back to you, you just gave them an offer and they're going to come back to you and ask you for more if they weren't happy should never, ever be guaranteed, no matter what type of market we have. If it's a buyer's market, seller's market, neutral market, you put in an offer. So you usually want to come in very strong, or as strong as you are willing to do so. Maybe not the best part, but the highest part, right? And then if you are given another opportunity, then you can kind of start seeing where you might want to, I don't want to say cut corners, but make it a little sweeter, cut the contract a little bit, make it a little bit more streamlined. And so we're going to give you kind of ways in which that can happen today.
And the really important thing is to talk to your buyer's agent and find out and have that buyer's agent talk to the listing agent. If multiple offers already exist, then you need to walk into it knowing that this is probably your only chance. If a listing agent or a seller has 10 offers, the likelihood that they are going to call for round 2 is low. Most likely they're going to assume that everybody's given their best offer. They might counter their favorite, or they might just accept it. But we have a lot of agents and a lot of buyers getting upset because they think there's some rule that they have to get a second chance. It doesn't exist. And in this market, it's rarely happening.
Mm-hmm. But I did have recently where there was a second round, actually two different times recently where there was a second round of highest and best.
But wasn't that where the first deal fell apart?
Yes, both of them were after the first deal fell apart.
They came back after, yeah.
They called highest and best, picked somebody, both houses fell through. The second time around, they called for highest and best again. Now, this we'll see how both sides it didn't work for both sides, quite honestly. The first house that I'm thinking of, my buyers on second inspection or second walkthrough and second consideration went, I don't even want to buy this house anymore. Like, we were just kind of felt a little against the wall and didn't have many options, and we have no interest. It completely take our contract, our offer away.
And that's happening a lot
well, that's why so many houses
market
are falling through too, right?
Right.
People are feeling lots of pressure, which is another reason we want to talk to you about good ways and bad ways, and we don't ever want anybody to have buyer's remorse.
And have all these conversations up front, because if you're having it in the driveway of a house you just saw, that's the only house that seems like it's available, and correct. You have to quickly make a decision about, where you're going to escalate your offer, and you're still getting over the fact that you're not offering 10% under list price like your dad told you were going to. So we're telling you, here's where you need to be. You want to make sure that you're thinking about this and talking about it ahead of time.
Right. And so in the second instance that I could talk, that I personally witnessed was, my clients had come in at their highest and best that they could. The first time around, they had nowhere to go this time. And it turned out that the agent came back to me. He said, you know what? Nobody changed their highest and best. Everybody stayed where they were. So I think the sellers trying to get a few extra bucks, see if anybody knew was coming in, and it just didn't happen because luckily, for all the buyers, they really put their best foot forward the first time. And unfortunately for however many of them, it wasn't enough. So, there does come a time where the highest and best you just can't go, and that's fine. You need to know where you're staying, because again, we don't want, because I can tell you a story. I mean, obviously those two times, first buyer fell through, second buyer fell through, on some other houses that I've seen lately. It's really, and I know I have a few friends who are dealing with this over and over.
Hi, Terry.
Over again. Hello. And it is really, I would hope that, and I try to guide my clients, and so far it's worked. Be fully aware. We talk and we talk and we talk and we talk about this. And that's why we're doing this, right? To make you know when you're putting the offer that you don't go, wait, what did I get into? And we are seeing that, in this area and across the United States, where people are, just have their buyers are calling them like, a week or two after they close, going, we'll get into this, but
yeah. So the first thing you have to do is be sure that this is the house you want to put your best offer in on, that you are committed to it, that you're going to stick with it, that you're going to be happy with paying top dollar for it, because you're going to pay top dollar for any house you buy in this market. So before you commit to making the offer, you need to know that you're really and truly sure that this house will work for your purposes. And that you're going to like it enough to carry through. Right. So then you need to put your best offer together. And as we said, typically in this market, you're going to, blind offers are crazy. Yes, unfortunately, that's kind of how our system's set up in Illinois. And there are some other places where they do things a little bit differently. But we almost always are competing against offers we have no idea what they contain. So the only thing that we can do, and there's a reason for that. It's because, you might go higher than you have to. But what we want to make sure is that you are going to be okay, comfortable in the payment, comfortable with your choices. If you are a person who always feels like you just really have to get a deal, this is not your market. This is just not the time really for you to buy a house. If you are a person who needs a home and you can afford to pay what the market price is right now, then we can get you that house. But we have to go in, not pulling any punches, not saving $5,000 amortized over 30 years. That is going to amount to, a pizza a month. So that you can feel like you saved something, because you will lose that house. So the first part of it is highest. So that's obviously the highest offer. And where we say, and the other thing is, we used to look at comps and say, this is where the price of this house ought to be. Those rules are kind of out the window at the moment, because the market's escalating faster than comps can reflect. Doesn't mean that that's not the value. I think a lot of people are wrong with that, but it does mean that you're not going to have the data to support that price. So we're going to look at, for highest, where are you okay going to whatever point you're comfortable with, that if it's sold for a few dollars more, you'd be okay. So if you lose this house and then you say, I should have gone $5,000 more, then you made the wrong offer.
Right.
You need to be comfortable with losing it at that price.
Right.
That's really the best advice we can give on that.
And I always say that with pre-approvals, right? Like, you can't make a buyer pay more than they're willing to. And so that's exactly where I feel that this market should be. And I use that same thing. If you found out, tomorrow that we lost it by a couple $1,000s, would you be like, I'm very happy with what I tried. We tried our best. Or are you going to have offers remorse? We don't want buyer's remorse, but we also don't want offers remorse either.
Right. And when you talk about that pre-approval, it better be strong. If you put in an offer that shows that you can afford exactly what you're offering, that seller and listing agent are going to look at this and say, this buyer is pulling the change out of their couch to buy this house.
Right.
So you need a pre-approval that shows that you have much more buying power than you're willing to use. And then, so let's talk a little bit about what's best. What are some of the terms that you can improve that make a seller look at your offer versus the others?
One would be closing date. It's very important, and this is why we love our preferred lenders, is because we have very good relationships with them, and we know when they say that they have a timeline, they stick to it, and they have a relationship with us. We're partners, so they want to make us happy too, and our clients happy. So if they tell me that they can close a house in 30 days, then I know that they will close a house in 30 days. Not all lenders are very honest, and some don't care or can't make promises that they can't keep. So it's very important for us to know immediately and from the beginning what the timeline is for the particular lender that you're using, that a buyer is using. And then we know, sometimes even the earliest isn't the best either. Sometimes
that's part of the reason for that initial call to the listing agent. Do you have other offers? And what's important to your seller? Do they have a closing date that they have someplace else that they're going? Do they need extra time? Do they need it quicker? All of those things will help make your offer, besides the fact that buyer's agent starts to build a little bit of rapport, it will help make your offer stronger.
Correct.
The next thing is earnest money. So earnest money is the money you put down with the contract. It's a check that will be cashed. You won't have access to it throughout the transaction. However, it does get applied at the end at the closing table. So it's not extra money. If you don't violate the terms of the contract, you're very rarely in jeopardy of losing that earnest money. So if you can make that more cash, if you can put down $10,000 or $15,000 in earnest money, even though it doesn't mean that the seller's going to get more money, again, it goes to strength of the buyer, and they're going to like to see that. And that doesn't actually even cost you anything.
Right. What we're seeing in this market, though, is that you still have your 5 days to cancel. So it doesn't mean unless you specifically say that it's guaranteed.
That it's non-refundable.
That's not refundable, that you guarantee it. You can still have your normal contingencies, the contingencies with the attorney inspection period still apply. So those 5 days you would.
And since we're talking about ways to improve your offer, making that non-refundable is one of those ways. You better be pretty darn sure you're going to buy this house if you're going to do that. But that is a possibility. And then what about seller credit? Closing cost credit, it's sometimes called. Is that a good idea to put in your offer?
Not at all, especially if you don't need it. If you're like, oh, but I would love to buy some furniture after, then you love to buy a cheaper house.
Yeah, or you were just watching HGTV and they got closing costs and you thought that was just, a way to get free money. First of all, it's not free money. You're borrowing it. You're mortgaging it. You're just getting some of it back at the table.
Yes.
And secondly, that's not what anybody's going to want to see right now.
And we always, we show this, I tell my buyers and we explain this to the sellers during their net sheets, is that to them, it is not that offer. So you can be $30,000 more than list price. And if you're asking for $10,000 closing costs, that is not what the seller sees. Seller does not see the top number. They see the net number, not gross, net, under all of these things. And that's a good point to say, that the reason we talk about these bests and we're talking about these little things here and there to make it sweeter, it's because that all affects the net, because that's what a seller, that top number is where we start, and then all these other things start to subtract from what this seller is going to be making, and that's what it matters. So we're trying to get the net, the most nice looking number, the best out of everybody in this process.
Right. So then something that's not particularly expensive, but a home warranty. We would typically say, leave it off. You can buy your own. It's $500 or $600.
Correct.
But that's another few $100s that affects the seller's net. If you're close with another offer and they're trying to figure out which way is the scales tip, $500 or $600 might put you on the wrong side of that. So just don't.
Or it just looks like another, again, if we're talking $600,000 house, is 500 going to make or break? Probably not. There's probably a lot of other factors, but at the same time, it's just another thing. It's just another, do they want this house or not?
That you don't know what they are, you've just got to make it your best. So it's not a big deal. It's usually not make or break. In a different market, we almost always recommend it. But right now we're saying, let's just make this as clean as possible.
Correct.
As is, I typically recommend that my buyers agree to as is in this market, as long as it looks like the house has been well maintained and it looks like there's probably not going to be any or a lot of little things adding up. You are still able to, as you're talking about the protection period, the attorney and inspection period, if they find a $40,000 foundation problem, you can still walk away from that house.
I would like to say that you need to understand as is and mean as is, because that's what is breaking a lot of deals these days. And two, I hate to say this, but something like structural like that is, at least you don't necessarily completely walk away. You still want to talk to the sellers.
They might say, well, we didn't know that, take it on. Absolutely.
Don't go in expecting it, because first of all, you should have seen that there's gigantic cracks in the basement. When visually, we need to be making sure that we're ticking off any of the big problem things.
Don't walk up and see a cracked sidewalk and then ask for it in your attorney and inspection review. We just had that, and
you sound bitter.
Almost lost the house.
Right. So, if you can visually see it, we need to put that into consideration, right? Well, how much are you willing to pay this house, knowing these problems, or knowing that it's not perfect? But yes, so something that was unknown and found. If that big of a deal, don't go in with the idea that you're still going to try to negotiate, even though you went in as is, because you do want to really, in good faith, put forth your offer. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a deal breaker either.
Based on the inspection, if you're considering walking away, you probably want to first check with the seller and see if they're willing to take those things on.
Correct.
And so you're still well protected when you write as is into a contract.
Correct.
It's not a huge risk for a buyer. And by the way, most of those things that you're asking for anyway, GFCIs and a smoke detector, really the new homeowner should be expecting to take things like that on anyway. They're not really appropriate to ask for in any market. Definitely not this one.
Yes.
And then contingencies. So we have two types of real estate contingencies that can be written into a contract. And one typically leads to the other, but it could start in the middle. We have a home sale contingency and a home close contingency. How are those going over?
Lead balloons.
Yeah. Goes in the no pile.
Yes. So, obviously there are some people out there who are really nice sellers who are going, wow, I get where these people are coming from. But those are very few and far between. And we understand there's not much you can do for it. Each step you get is a little bit better, right? So if you can have your house under contract or through a attorney inspection period for your sale, that's better than not having the house on the market at all. So there are steps that make it a little bit better.
If you can throw a little more on the price, that's going to help them overlook some of your deficiencies. So if you've got a home sale contingency and you up your offer, or particular types of financing, because FHA and VA have kind of higher standards, a lot of people are afraid of them. If they've got your offer alongside some conventional offers and the prices are close, they're probably going to go with conventional. But if you can sweeten the pot and make them, a little greedy, they might overlook something that that makes it a little harder to take your offer. So we do have to be careful, and we'll talk a little bit about appraisals next, but that's almost always the answer for getting somebody to look at your offer. So we want it clean on the term side, but definitely needs to be high on the price side. And it's true that they're not always going to take the highest offer, but it helps. So if that's what you got, then throw some money at it. And when you throw money at it, you run into another danger that we're seeing with sweetening the pot.
So we kind of started with the things that we think are good, that we can negotiate, that you might be able to be, confident in. These other two that I'm thinking of next are a lot riskier. I'm thankfully not seeing them in my market, or maybe it's because I'm not encouraging it, so that's why I'm not seeing it in this market. But I'm definitely seeing it in other markets. It's appraisal waiver, or which basically means that appraisal has to happen, right? If you're getting any type of loan, you have to have an appraisal. Unless you're paying like 50%, in that case, sometimes the lenders will waive it, but as a whole, you're having an appraisal. Well, people are basically guaranteeing. So they're saying that, I know we went $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 over list price. We'll guarantee that. That is that's for those who are,
And appraisals can come in anywhere. So they don't have to come in at list or above list in any way. As we talked about, it's impossible for the comps, which appraisers have to look at, to keep up with how quickly the market's moving. Right. So what I've been suggesting is at least guarantee a portion of it. So if a seller is taking an offer because it's more than all of the others, and an appraiser with his or her own opinion comes in and says it's not worth that, then the seller is going to have the choice to go back on the market or go back to those other offers, kill your deal, and try to get more money from someone with a different appraiser, because appraisers all have different opinions. So that appraiser, it's important to know that that appraiser's value is no more valid than anybody else's value of that house, but it's the only one the bank cares about. So your bank, if you're a buyer, or your buyer's bank, if you're a seller, will only lend up to that amount. If you want the house and you're willing to guarantee that you'll come up with some cash on top of that, that is a perfectly acceptable thing to do in this market. But as Danielle says, you have to be careful how much it is. So you don't just say, we'll guarantee that price no matter what, unless you've got gobs and gobs of cash laying around.
Correct.
So what we've had typically is there's an amount. So maybe we're $10,000 over on the price, and we say we will guarantee an appraisal shortfall of $5,000. Now, if that's a $200,000 house, or the contract is for $200,000, and the appraisal comes in at 190, then you're going to pay 195. But if that appraisal comes in at 180, you're going to pay 185. So you're just guaranteeing a certain amount of money over the short appraisal. And it wouldn't exceed the contract price. So again, you have to be sure that you want that house and that you're okay with that price. But that's another way to strengthen your offer and give the seller some peace of mind that they're not going to accept a big price and then have it knocked down by an appraiser.
Yes. So again, that goes into good faith, though. So that's another. I'm going to put it for $30,000 more, and then appraiser comes
It'll
back.
never appraise. It will be safe. Yeah.
Yay. You know. So and then the last one is inspection. You know, we talked about as is, which, you know, attorney inspection period allows you time to get an inspector in and do your various inspections. As is says we will have that inspector come in, and regardless what is found, we are moving forward. We just want peace of mind to know what we're dealing with. Then there is inspection waiver, where some people are saying, we won't have an inspector come in. We're good. Unless you are very educated on many aspects.
Yeah, if you're a contractor, a builder, if you're super handy, if you really, if you know what you're looking at.
Correct.
And you're comfortable with it, then you could waive inspection. But we would never suggest that somebody who wasn't an expert of some kind, or maybe the person, going on showings with you is an expert, can look at it while you're there.
I was going to say, you always have anybody, well, not anybody, within reason, probably, especially in COVID times, maybe one other person come through the home with you,
right, good point.
and give their opinion.
You might not have an official inspection, but you had someone who really was able to look and know what they're looking at. The other thing is, maybe if you're planning on doing a gut rehab on a property, it wouldn't matter that much. But in most cases, really the inspection is for buyer beware, and is a really important part of the process. Correct.
So that would be, I think, in most cases, beyond desperation. I say we keep looking, looking at that point. I would say it's probably safer to throw an extra $5,000 into the offer than it would be to, hope that there's no big problem.
Right.
Anything that you didn't know about. So.
Right. So, all right. Well, that's our story about highest and best offers and what's expected in today's market. As the market shifts, all of these things change. So we're keeping up on it. You don't have to. You just need to ask us.
Yeah. So thanks, Terry and Dominic, for making some comments and keeping us on our toes with what's out there. And we never did ask for comments, but we always.
Oh yeah, we forgot. We usually say.
We do.
Say something. It's I got to tell you, it's a little intimidating when you're talking, even though you know what you're talking about, and your mentor shows up.
Yes.
But we do appreciate it, Terry.
Yes. So we look forward to seeing you next week. We don't have a topic just yet, but we'll be here.
If there's something you want to know about, let us know.
Absolutely.
All right.
All ears.
See you next week.
Have a great week. Bye.